Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is CityTalk. He's represented Colin Ferguson, the Long Island Railroad shooter. Also, Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman. Also, Occupy Wall Street protesters. Also, alleged associates of the Gambino crime family. He's argued cases in the highest U.S. and New York State courts where he speaks truth to power. He's also Curtis Sliwa's partner on 77 WABC Radio's Curtis and Kuby, where he just talks. He's Ron Kuby, and he's here to talk criminal defense, policing and over-policing, wrongful convictions, public nudity, talk radio, WABC, Curtis, de Blasio, Christie, and whatever else we drift into. Welcome, Ron. It's been a while.
It has, Doug. Thanks so much. What a great introduction.
Thank you.
Boy, Mom would be so proud of some of those things.
Thank you, and she ought to be. Okay. I don't know if you're like me, but I get up angry every morning. I wake up and something's bothering me. What's bothering you
Nothing.
today? Nothing.
I'm not like you. I wake up in the morning happy. I go through the day happy. I go to bed happy. There are a lot of terrible things that happen, but I'm not going to make any of them any better by being angry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, man.
What about disturbed? You're disturbed.
I'm disturbed and I'm disturbing. But angry is a terrible way to go through life.
Okay, I take it back.
Okay, stop. Don't hurt me.
Okay. I went to your website, and it was really fascinating. It's great reading, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, it's very, very engaging. You talk about your practice areas, and you've got wrongful conviction, criminal defense, First Amendment, police misconduct, and public nudity.
Well, you got to do public nudity. It's an important aspect of New York life. I started doing public nudity cases.
Go ahead.
Okay.
This is the Topless Mermaid?
No, well before
Oh,
the
well,
mermaids.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Spencer Tunick, who now is renowned around the world as a photographer who takes scenes, mass nude scenes.
Right.
All over the world.
Okay.
But back in Giuliani's New York, he was a mere irritant. So I started taking those cases, and I realized there is no law prohibiting public nudity in New York City as long as it's done pursuant to a play, performance, exhibition, or show. And really, when isn't it? So
In New York, it's always a show.
It's always a show.
Okay,
so I started doing that, and then I became surprised at the number of people who got arrested either for full artistic nudity or women who got arrested for toplessness. I mean, one of the problems is the New York City Police Department has never been trained about how to handle bare breasts.
Oh, God. Go ahead.
Okay, so
Go.
yeah.
That was it? That was the punchline?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a long build-up.
Okay. But it was pretty good. What I remember and know you for, other than the talking in terms of the law, are your criminal defense cases and your wrongful conviction cases. And you've got a real practice in that. Talk about the various elements of wrongful conviction, particularly in non-DNA cases, which you've been working on. This is serious stuff.
It's incredibly serious, and most of these cases were a product of New York in the 1980s, mid-1980s through 92, 93, 94, during the height of the crack epidemic. Mm-hmm. You had 4 times the number of murders, you had half the number of cops, you had a tremendous urgency to solve these cases.
Right.
It was urgency created by the public, by the government, and
Pauls.
Yeah,
everybody.
and everybody. It's
Right.
like, who can forget the headline, Dave, do something, after the Brian Watkins murder. So the cops did something. They moved as fast as they could, resolved cases as quickly as they could, oftentimes bad confessions, coerced confessions, made-up confessions.
The Scarcella case in
Louis
Brooklyn is
Scarcella, prime
unbelievable.
example.
Talk about it.
Louis Scarcella is currently under investigation by multiple groups related to his manufacture of confessions, just out of thin air, his coercion of confessions, as well as using multiple favorite witnesses. Like he had one witness who shows up 5 or 6 times, always happens to be there at the scene of utterly unrelated murders. Many of his confessions start out with the same words, and as a literary archaeologist, if you will,
you are, of
which
course.
I play on television, as we know, whenever you find different writings that have exactly the same words from otherwise totally unrelated people, you begin to think that the author himself, in this case Scarcella, had a lot more to do with it.
Wait, time out. Well, what about his superiors in the PD? What about judges? What about the DA?
Right. Yeah, well, that's
what
right.
about Joe Hines?
And that's and before Hines, much of this was the problem of Elizabeth Holtzman.
That's right.
And that's exactly
That's
the
right.
problem. The amazing thing about the criminal justice system is Scarcella got results. So the DAs said, fine, he gets results. It's not up to me. We'll leave it to the jury, the judges. There is on board with fighting crime as the cops are, and nobody takes any responsibility. The thing about the criminal justice system, what goes into the making of wrongful convictions, is the fact that no one is ever held responsible for anything except the defendant. Now, the defendant gets to pay full price. Everybody else gets a pass. It's like, when every kid in the class gets most improved student award, nobody is most improved. If everyone is jointly responsible, then nobody's responsible. And that's the way the system has worked. And it's put away a lot of innocent people, particularly for crimes like murder.
It seems to me that there's got to be some provision in the law on faults where people go to jail. It's like the bankers. They got away with everything.
It's exactly like
and
the bankers.
We got screwed. It's the same deal.
That's right.
Oh,
That's
thank
right.
you.
Although,
that's it. It's just, that's
I mean,
right?
no. It was a very trenchant analysis.
Thank you.
That's exactly what happens. At best, we can rescue some of the people who have been victimized. And look, I'm not saying that the majority of people behind bars are innocent. I'm not even saying a large percentage of them are innocent.
Or even your client. No, we're not.
All of my clients.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But, when you deal with mass incarceration, as we do in America, we got 2 million people in prisons in this country. A very small percentage can yield a huge number. So even if 5% of the people are wrongfully convicted, it's a huge number of people.
And then a lot of them are on death row. I mean, we just had the example. How many years was he in jail on death row?
Right. He was
because
in for over. Exactly.
It's unbelievable. Okay. Some of your cases have led to some serious precedents in People versus
Kamwadi Badassi.
Right.
This was a false confession case.
Do it.
She confessed to a series of absolutely horrific episodes of molesting a single male child who was 4 years old, which raised a lot of questions in and of itself. Virtually the only evidence against her was her own confession, which had been coerced. And we were able to establish, at least in the Court of Appeals of the State of New York, the highest court, that indeed evidence, experts who can testify about false confessions, this evidence is admissible.
Wow.
It's not junk science. It's recognized fact, and in a proper case, the judges should allow that testimony. It didn't help my client.
Right.
They ended up affirming her conviction on other grounds, but hopefully it'll help others in the future.
What's the next positive legal step in this area? I mean, if you were writing the law or developing the procedures.
I think that there's a whole wide variety of procedures that need to be undertaken to create independent review of claims of actual innocence.
Okay.
That is, independent in the sense of not within the control of the DA's office.
Right.
Now, these days, the conviction integrity units, starting to use air quotes, but
Right.
because you use this too much, people start to think you're crazy. But
and in your case, it's happens, but that's not the
it doesn't bother me
positive
much.
evidence.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yes, but they're the latest fashion accessory for a DA. Well, look at this. We have a conviction integrity unit. What they don't mention are these are all staffed by current assistant district attorneys. Right. They're run. You're evaluating the work of your colleagues or your predecessors. You have an institutional bias to see conviction everywhere and to see guilt everywhere, and they're really they're ornaments to make the whole stinking package look a little better.
Oh, man,
You need an independent body with subpoena power. And look, the Attorney General is capable of
Yes.
creating
Yes.
such an institution.
Yes.
He's created his own smaller institution within the AG's office, but what really needs is some sort of statewide review body that has real legal authority to overturn convictions.
And you've had, you know, a very interesting relationship with various prosecutors and DAs. I remember the Occupy Wall Street Bologna,
Yes.
pepper spraying. I think, air quotes again, your quote regarding Cy Vance was a decision of cowardice and despicable.
Right. Tawdry and despicable, cowardly. And it was also, as I subsequently found out, it was corrupt in the sense that Vance made the decision at the beginning that there was going to be no prosecution. He had his lackeys conduct an investigation. And as they continued to investigate, the more bad stuff they found. And eventually he just said, forget it, we're not prosecuting. This is not a case. And it was because, you know, of his very, very close and very unhealthy relationship with the then police commissioner, Ray Kelly, because Ray Kelly would invite Cy Vance to press conferences. You know, Cy Vance doesn't get invited many places anymore.
Man.
Kelly, and there would be Kelly announcing the arrest, and there's the prosecutor, there's Cy Vance. You know, you teach at CUNY.
Yeah.
You understand the term legacy admittee.
Oh.
Yeah. You know, you're at a highly selective college and you see a kid that doesn't play sports, doesn't have any apparent outstanding artistic skills, and appears to be dumber than everybody else. And you ask yourself, how did this kid get into this school? Why is this kid going to my school? And the answer is he's a legacy admittee. His father went and his grandfather, his great-grandfather endowed a wing. Well, Cy Vance is the legacy admittee to the New York County DA's office. I have to say, and I've been in New York for 30 years, and I've seen a lot of bad district attorneys in the 5 boroughs over time. I do honestly believe that Cy Vance is the worst. Now look.
No, wait a minute. I don't want to get into ticking off every prosecutor, but there's a prosecutor in the Bronx that ain't too swift.
Robert Johnson, I've known for decades.
Go ahead.
I've disagreed with a lot of his decisions, but he's been consistent and he's been a hard worker.
Okay.
And he's, you know, look.
Okay.
Just to show I'm not partisan, Dan Donovan, Staten Island DA, great guy, fair guy, works hard. Tries to do the right thing. Obviously, I'm always going to disagree.
Right. Well, you have to.
Prosecutorial decisions.
But that's your
but
job.
I expect that.
Right.
Within that, I expect prosecutors to conduct themselves with some integrity.
Oh, man. Tell it
Yeah,
like
I make
it
a
is,
lot of
Ron.
friends.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know,
me
this
too,
is why
but
I have a
you're
job.
better than I am.
Well, you know, the nice thing is I do have this radio job.
That allows you to
which
say this with impunity.
Yeah, it pays me enough money that if the New York County DA's office says from now on, as to Kuby, F you, it's like I can live with that.
I'm sure you can live with everything. Okay, doing my homework, I come across an April 15, 2012 Sunday piece in AM New York, really quite good, by Sheila Ann Feeney.
Right.
And you are asked the question, what would you most like to see changed or accomplished in New York City? You remember your response?
I think what I said at that time
'cause I've got it. Go
was an end to over-policing and an end or reduction of this, you know, wholesale stop and frisk.
That's exactly right. Now, that was almost close to 2 years ago.
Right.
Now, in the interim, you've had 2 city council laws, one establishing an IG, one allowing suits. Then you've got the federal district court decision with a monitor. You know, we've got the circuit court. I want you to dive into that more, asshole.
Okay, I will, but let me just advert back to my previous statement. We won this. See, the one thing that I think had to be done, in fact, was done, which is why I am happy in the morning.
Oh, this glow has lasted all this time?
So I think that there were 2 things going on around stop and frisk at the same time. One was the legal battle, which took place over about a decade.
Right.
Because the Bloomberg administration threw lawyers at this case like the Wicked Witch and her flying monkeys. It was like...
It was unbelievable. It really was.
And so that legal dynamic was going on.
Right.
And while that was going on at the same time, there was a political dynamic that was changing.
Yep.
Because you know what? If you throw 1 million black and Latino kids up against the wall every year. Every year they were doing this. You are eventually going to anger a sufficiently large number of members of the black and Latino community, the progressive white community, and everybody else, that people start to say, just stop this. This is not effective.
Yeah.
And so there's a political change which resulted ultimately in the election of Bill de Blasio.
And also, the cops didn't particularly care for this either. I remember I did some consulting with the PD, and the cops said, I got to bust guys who were drinking beer on a Friday night on Southern Boulevard. They're playing dominoes. There's nothing wrong. I got to bust them. They didn't want to do it either.
And that is sort of the unmentioned backstory of stop and frisk. The police officers who work these neighborhoods regularly hated stop and frisk because they knew that every time they threw somebody up against the wall, they made an enemy. And you throw 1 million kids up against the wall every year, you make 1 million enemies.
Or whatever the number. It wasn't 1 million. It was less than 1 million.
1 year it was actually, it hit, I think in 2012 it was, I think it hit 980,000.
Oh, okay.
It was
a lot of people.
Number. A lot.
A lot.
Now, it's true, many of them were thrown up against the wall repeatedly, but the cops didn't like it. I mean, the cops want community policing in the sense of they want to be able to walk down the street, they want to be able to talk to people.
Right.
They get us some intel in the community who's really doing what, who isn't doing
Both
what.
of them want what Aretha Franklin wanted. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Yeah, no, it's true.
And to get respect, you got to give respect.
Yep.
And you don't give respect by taking a kid and throwing him up against the wall simply because he's black.
Okay. So you've got change in policy at the city level. You've got a federal court decision that's sort of hanging out there because the circuit then disavows.
Well, you know, the
explain
Blasio,
a little bit of this.
Yeah.
If you want.
I mean, basically, I totally understand. I'm just trying to explain it. So the plaintiffs win their case completely. Judge Shira Shinlin orders sweeping changes and installs a monitor. And ultimately, she is supervising the monitor. That remains federal
and
court
a scathing report. Scathing. The language is a bomb.
And most people, honest people, recognize that she was right. But the city, then under Bloomberg, they appeal. They go to the Second Circuit. And before the appeal is decided, the Second Circuit basically removes Judge Shinlin from the litigation. On the flimsiest pretext. The reality of what was actually going on, the real backstory.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what you're here.
Okay, that's why I'm here. Okay. Well, the Court of Appeals recognized that the new administration was going to get rid of this lawsuit and settle this case. They just didn't want Judge Shinlin to be overseeing the NYPD for the next 4 or 6 or 8 years.
Okay. So in a sense, it was personal.
It was very, very, very personal as to her. But what she accomplished remains accomplished.
Okay.
Mission accomplished.
Okay, so we're 3 months into the de Blasio administration. Is there something noticeable there in terms of what you do as an attorney?
No, not really.
Okay.
You know, most of the cases that I get are not products of stop and frisk.
Right.
I know that those cases have diminished dramatically.
Right.
Far fewer people generally wanting to sue because they've been tossed or thrown up against the wall. But the criminal justice system is a remarkably conservative institution in the sense that any changes take a very long time. And de Blasio really has not focused on criminal justice reform. He focused on stop and frisk.
Right, that's true.
Which is really, for black and Latino people, it's more of a quality of life issue.
Oh, yeah.
Can I walk home without being thrown down on the street by a cop?
Busted and everything else.
Right.
Okay, let's move off the law. Let's get to radio.
Yes.
Yes.
So much more fun because you know what? Nobody dies or goes to prison at the end of my show.
And nobody fact checks you except every once in a while your listeners call irate.
I get fact checked. I get fact-checked
more than the prosecutors.
Certainly.
Okay. So you're back on WABC, you and Curtis, since January.
January 2nd,
2014. That was a 7-year hiatus? You guys worked from 2000 to 2007.
We started on the radio in November of 1996.
Oh,
we took over the morning show on WABC Radio. Morning Drive in May of 2000.
Right.
And I was formally fired on November 1st, 2007, about 3:13 in the afternoon.
Okay.
Not that I'm bitter.
No, I wouldn't expect you to be bitter, just purely analytical.
Yeah.
Talk about your firing in the context and the changes in media and talk radio. Go ahead.
Well, when I was
larger implications.
The larger implications at the time I was fired in 2007, the talk radio was being consolidated into this large, angry, right-wing noise machine. There was the concept of what my boss, the guy that fired me, called stationality.
Oh, hey.
And I'm like, station? He says, yeah, it's like, stations have personalities. It's like stationality. And we don't want our morning show guy, Ron Kuby, saying the stuff our afternoon guy, Sean Hannity, is saying is ridiculous, right? We want stationality. We want to cocoon our listeners with exactly the same opinions from different looking mouths.
Right.
So I was fired.
So you weren't on message.
I was right.
You weren't on message.
I was way to the left of message.
That's exactly right. So it goes in a sense right wing, Rush and Hannity, and
all the other little junior members
right,
of Fascist Fest who chime in and trying looking for a place. And lo and behold, people discovered that listeners, even especially conservative listeners, don't want to hear this anymore because it's the same thing over and over. Obamacare is worse than 9/11. Obama is.
This sounds like Curtis. Wait a second.
People don't want to hear
that
go ahead. Generally anymore.
Okay.
They want an intelligent discussion. They want to learn something. They want to be entertained.
That's an optimistic view, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, I'm optimistic too. That's why I'm happy in the morning.
Still, we're going to stay with the happy.
It's going to be the theme
of today's show. Okay, thank you. But it's not only that, it's also the corporatization and the corporate conflict between, Clear Channel. Talk about that kind of conflict. I mean, they got rid of Rush and Hannity. They went to WOR. You guys come in. But it's these two media conglomerates that are at war.
Right. What's been going on for some time is the consolidation of radio in fewer and fewer hands and the use of syndicated hosts, that is, people who do one show in 400 different markets, rather than local shows.
Right.
Now, there is a business model for this, and it's a lot like a mafia bust-out operation.
Hey!
Okay? Just
be careful.
No, I'm not. It's not a criticism.
Oh, okay. Because
it's an observation.
You got to watch it.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Look, the mob makes money.
Go ahead.
Right.
And sometimes they paid you fees. Probably they have. I'm sorry.
I wouldn't know. So the way it works is they use their consolidated syndicated talent, fire the morning shows around the country, and you save a lot of money that way.
Sure.
Now you may lose listeners, you may lose revenue, and you do. But if you lose half of your revenue, which would be horrible with a regular corporation, but you cut your expenses by 80%.
Right.
You've had a good year.
Right.
This is great. The problem with that is you cannot do that forever. It has a very short half-life.
But they were very successful, and they still got big audience shares.
And they have been successful, but increasingly radio stations are on the market. They're worth less and less.
Yeah.
Advertising revenue is down. So our bosses at Cumulus decided to try something, air quotes again, different.
Right.
Which is use local talent. Do a local show.
Right.
Not to do it in a small way.
Right.
We're not talking potholes, but
right.
This is New York.
Right.
The media capital
of the world.
Right.
I mean, forget
the
media
universe.
capital.
And
right.
we know it.
Right.
And there's not a single local radio talk station that's devoted to keeping the mayor honest, the governor, the tri-state area.
Yep.
So
live and local.
Right. Live and local. And we can sell stuff. We can not only get good ratings, but we can sell things. And they like people who can push product, and we do. Curtis is the best at it. Curtis is a master. Curtis will drive a Honda home and a Mini Cooper on the way to work. He'll douse himself in Chamonix products while looking at the Hebrew home for his elderly mother, all the time drinking green tea extract and borrowing some money with the mortgage thing. He's fantastic. He's incredible. He's advertising friendly. And the thing about New York that most people don't realize who are not in the radio world is, Rush and Hannity, they're huge. They get big numbers. Savage, Levin, same things. A lot of these people cannot be sold in New York. You know, if you are an advertiser and you're on the air in New York and you affiliate your product with Rush Limbaugh, you know, unless your product is boycott me, I want to see a demonstration in front of my corporate headquarters, unless that's your product, you can't sell them here. They can at least sell us. For all the outrageous stuff Curtis and I have said over the years, we never got put on the advertiser blacklist. And I think that's mostly due to the fact that if listeners hear both sides of an issue, they hear their own views given voice.
Right. And you think you do that with Curtis? I mean, it's sort of a fair fight. I think you pull punches once in a while.
You know, the idea,
take it easy on him a little bit.
The idea is not to win.
Right,
the argument.
Talk.
Nobody wins these arguments.
Right.
You know, we talk about the same 10 things that people have talked about from the dawn of humankind. You know, the relationship of individuals to the state. You know, what is the nature of individual conscience? What's the meaning of life? What creates happiness? And these are not new topics. Nobody wins these arguments. The idea is to
These are the
discuss
eternal
them.
verities. I mean, come on.
Right.
Hey.
So illustrate different dimensions of them and hopefully do it in an entertaining way that keeps people listening and in some ways both reflects their views and challenges their thinking somewhat. And if we can do all of that in every segment, in my view, we have a great show.
I told you off camera, my mother-in-law loves you.
Exactly.
She loves it.
And she's
88.
Yeah, she's my prime demographic.
Nice, nice. Okay, how do you prepare for
Hi,
this show?
Mrs. What's her
Saunders.
Name? Hi, Mrs. Saunders.
Oh my God, she's gonna choke.
Peace out.
Nice, very nice.
Hey.
How do you prepare for the show? Prepare with air quotes.
Prepare?
We're doing a lot of air quotes. Prepare.
You know, every interaction is show prep. Everything I do all day is show prep.
Do you get up, read the paper? What do you do?
Oh, actually do besides live?
Yes.
Yeah, I get up, I read the paper, I look at specific articles that I think are worth talking about. I talk to Curtis in the morning. He's done the same thing.
Okay.
We confer generally about things we'd like to talk about, and we get to the station usually an hour and a half before. Nail down topics, block out the show in the sense that this half hour we'll do this, that half hour that, then spend some time having our producer pulling some sound, pulling some relevant music, any other audio that's out there relevant to the topic. Because radio is sort of theater of the mind, so you have to you know, paint pictures with words.
Yeah.
So instead of describing a car crash, you have the sound of brakes squealing and
glass breaking.
Yeah.
You do it all the time. The sound effects are, you know,
That's right.
50s.
Right. But you know what? They're eternal verities.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Turn them back on me. You're not coming back. That's it. My thanks to Ron Kuby for being on the show. Join me next week when my guest will be Nancy Foner, and the talk is about the effect of immigration on New York, past, present, and future. Sir.
Hey. Bye, Mrs. Saunders.
Nice. Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.